We'll get more into what the locals say after I finish the
Of
timeline.
course. I'm sorry.
No, but I mean, it could be. I mean, it is like classic Bigfoot story, just with Alaska, so it's called something else. But like any of the Bigfoots could just be wild people
Right.
or what? Like what is it? I don't know. But um in 1948, large human-like tracks are found on a trail, and then hunters' bodies are found mutilated in the nearby lagoon. So it's said the hunters went into the woods never to come out again, and that the bodies must have gone into the river and then dumped out into the lagoon closer to the town. And the bodies were said to have been dismembered and shredded in a way that wasn't how, like, any bear or other wildlife would do.
Ooh.
So these are the murder portion. So that definitely puts the whole town on edge when they find these bodies. In 1949, so a year after that, 18-inch long tracks are found following moose tracks. So a group of hunters were following a moose when they noticed these tracks and thought something else was also stalking the same moose for like food, like how they were doing it. And then they came to a small clearing where there was blood everywhere, no more moose tracks or moose found, but then there were still the 18-inch tracks that then led further into the mountains.
Oh my gosh.
So it got it and left whatever it is. Yeah. So, like, shortly after these, I mean, people abandoned the town. Like, in the later part of 1949, only the postmaster remains in the town, and then he also leaves after in 1950. And I couldn't find this anywhere, but when I first heard of this story, I had heard that he said living there alone was like too much for him to do. Like, he said he saw something stalking him from the tree line while he was living there alone.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so he just had to leave. But yeah, that's the end of Portlock as a town. But people still find themselves in that area, like due to one circumstance or another. So there's still a couple more stories of the area. So in 1968, a hunter is chased out of a gully by some unknown creature. No more details. 1973, hunters take refuge in the area from a storm and they hear something that sounds bipedal walking around their tent for 2 nights, and they left as soon as the storm passed. So that's scary.
Oh, yeah.
And also in 1973, an article is published in the Anchorage newspaper where they interview a retired school teacher who had taught in Portlock during World War II, like while these other things were happening there. And she said there were cannery workers who went into the mountains to like hunt sheep and they never returned.
Wow.
Yeah. In the 1980s, apparently there's hunters in the area and they reported that they were screamed at, which they cannot attribute the scream, like quote unquote, to anything they've ever heard before.
And they would know what a mountain lion sounds like because I feel like that's like the scariest scream you hear in the woods.
Oh yeah, I've heard videos. It's scary. I mean, they are hunters. I would think they know typical animals in the area.
Right.
Also in the 1980s, Portlock was officially wiped off the US Census. So it was officially not a town in the 1980s.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then in 2014, a researcher went into the area to explore, like looking for this creature that they had heard stories about. And they played a recording of a baby crying, which they said elicited trees shaking by some seemingly invisible force.
Oh my
So
god.
then they left. Yeah.
Let's go investigate ourselves.
Yeah. Well, I think you have to have permission to get there or something still.
We just need a kayak.
Oh, okay.
We'll kayak.
We also need guns.
Yeah, and probably not a kayak.
Okay. 3 years from now, we'll do a live investigation if we get super popular with our podcast.
Yeah, hold us to it.
Yeah. But yeah, the researcher is told later by a local that there was a white Bigfoot seen in like the town that was by where they were researching, I guess. but obviously no photo or anything, which is typical.
I know. How?
Yeah. And then 2018, Extreme Expeditions Northwest travels to the area to film a documentary and search for the creature, and they again return in 2019 to film a TV series. I didn't watch the TV series, but I did watch the documentary because it's on YouTube, and they don't really find too much evidence. I'm just gonna break it to you.
Huh.
There's because I thought maybe there's something promising, but they say there's like because they use FLIR thermal imaging, which is forward-looking infrared to capture like heat signatures, and they say like every single one of them, there was like 5 people on the expedition, and they said they all saw some like tall bipedal creature that looked like it was like putting its arms up and down. But by the time they thought to record what they were seeing on the FLIR, it's just a blob.
Okay, why wouldn't you be constantly
I
recording?
know. I'm like, you're there for a documentary, and you're gonna say everyone because they passed it around because it's like, or maybe everyone had their own FLIR or something, but they all saw it, and then they're thinking like, oh shit, we should record and do our job of documenting.
Right, like the whole reason they came.
Yeah. So I have a picture in there of just this little, it's nothing.
Blob.
Yeah, it's literally nothing. I don't know, kind of made me mad. But they also said they heard some tree knockings, which is like classic Bigfoot. But again, like there's nothing that they caught audio wise. And they also said they found some kind of imprint that was 14 inches long, and they took a photo. But the area is like so mossy and marshy that you like really can't tell anything.
Yeah, what imprint?
Yeah,
I'm
it's
looking at the picture, but
it's supposed to be by the boot. I think like where those like looked like it snapped, like little pieces. I don't know.
yeah. I mean, I can kind of see
But
it,
it's
but
also like could be an optical illusion or something.
right. Or the ground just shaped like that. Hard to tell.
Yeah.
Also, picture you don't have depth perception, so
Yeah. Yeah, some of these pictures are pretty hard to tell anything. But they said they couldn't cast anything because it's so mossy. So you wouldn't really see
of course
anything.
they couldn't.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, because the main guy that did this expedition like believes in Bigfoot. They had a guide there that he also believes in Bigfoot, and I read his book too. So if you want to check that out, it's only like 150 pages, but it's called like
Oh,
Abandoned. It'll be in the sources. But the other people that they brought like really don't believe in this creature, so that kind of adds a little credibility. Like they brought a biologist and they brought like a tracker guy, like Hunter.
right. Someone who knows what they're looking for, or like what they would be seeing.
Yeah, and like familiar with how animals would behave and stuff. And
Yeah.
yeah, so like the biologist actually, she said while they were walking, she sees something like peeking out from a tree to like watch them and then like darts back behind the tree, which is also supposed to be classic Bigfoot, but she doesn't know anything about Bigfoot, so.
So, yeah, how would she know that?
Right. So it's interesting that she says that, but like again, they couldn't find anything using the FLIR, and also like no one else saw or heard anything. So, and later she was like, "Oh, maybe it was just a bear like foraging." I don't know.
Yeah, I would explain it away.
Yeah. I mean, she is a biologist. She's not gonna think she doesn't believe in it, so. But I would say there was one thing that was super strange during their documentary that like by where Portlock used to be, they saw like lots of evidence of bear activity, like a lot of poop, no berries anywhere that are like left to pick, and like bedding. But then when they got like towards the lagoon side, then suddenly there was like no bear poop anywhere, and all the berries were unpicked, like everywhere,
Ooh.
which is very weird. Yeah. Like almost like the bears knew they couldn't go in that territory because it was like everywhere they looked was berries.
Oh my god.
Yeah. Like that's pretty crazy. You'd think if there's a lot of food in the area, bears would go there.
Especially if there's no berries in the area they're in.
Yeah. No evidence at all of bears being like it was almost like an invisible line they said that they crossed because suddenly there was berries everywhere and no bear poop anywhere.
Ooh.
So that's like one thing I got out of the documentary that's actually creepy. But yeah. So I don't know, is this Bigfoot or is it like something else? Locals, like native tribes there, they call this creature the Nantinak, which is just Bigfoot, but that's their term for it. They say it translates either to big hairy man or to half man, half beast, but other people say there's like really no direct translation to English. And locals say the creature has lived there forever, and the town of Portlock disturbed its territory.
Oh my gosh. The fact that this isn't like that's a long period of time for this stuff to be happening.
Right, because it started like because before people settled there, the closest thing is Seldovia, which is 16 miles like north of it, on the other side of like the
Right. Well, and then if the native people have a name for it,
right. Yeah, it is pretty crazy. I mean, a lot of native tribes like everywhere has a name for Bigfoot.
I know that's why it's real.
I think so too, but yeah, this area they call it the Nantinak, and this is kind of their origin tale of the Nantinak is that like one day there was a hunter who asked to be dropped off on the beach like in the Chatham Bay area, and he said for his companions to not wait for him as he was going into the woods to become a Nantinak. And he was later seen in a different port, and he told everyone to keep his wife away or he might take her away to live as a Nantinak with him too in the woods.
Oh.
And he also said to the people that he was going to be in the area for a long time and he didn't want anyone to see him as he was going to grow thick fur. Almost like a werewolf situation.
Yeah, what does that
I
mean?
know.
Maybe he like
Because this is their
was
origin.
shaving his whole body.
Yeah, he actually
I
had
don't know.
the like werewolf
Yeah,
gene.
and he was like, I'm so ugly. Let me go live in the woods alone. Like, I don't.
Yeah,
It's weird that he would say that.
right. Well, this is their story of it, of the origin. Could just be a story too.
I like to take things at
No, I
face
know.
value.
I actually do too, but yeah, like years later, he was said to have fully transformed into a non-Tanakh, and he no longer understood human speech, instead communicating through whistling,
Oh.
which is interesting that there's stories of high-pitched whistling. And it is said though that this tale is used to tell children to never go out alone in the woods or they will be grabbed by the non-Tanakh. So, boogeyman of the area.
Yeah.
But there's also a tale from a different native tribe that was written down in a book published in 1979, but the tale is called The Caveman of Portlock, and I'll just read it. But it says, there's a caveman in Portlock. The caveman is tall. The caveman is hairy. The caveman is a real person. He didn't want to live with people. He went to live in the forest. Soon his clothes were worn out, so his body became hairy. Soon his shoes were worn out, so his feet became big. He did not see anyone. He did not talk to anyone. Soon he forgot how to talk. He talked by whistling. He can see you before you see him. He will not harm you. He is like a big bear. If you bother him, he will bother you. This is the story of the caveman of Portlock. So, like, two different things of whistling.
Yeah, it's like the same story twice.
Yeah. But also, like, I don't know. This was published in 1979, but I don't know when the origins of the story is.
Right.
Because it mentions Portlock, so it has to be after Portlock discovered it in 1786, I think is what I said.
Right.
So, but still kind of weird that it basically says the same thing. But yeah, I mean, also the area did have a chromite mine, but it did stop producing shortly after World War II because the demand for chromite was down after the war, so that would coincide pretty perfectly with the town being abandoned.
Right.